YouTube, and welcome to another Doctor Who Big Finish review. Today I'm continuing my look at the final episode from the new 10th Doctor Volume 1 box set with Death and the Queen, which is the final episode to this sort of series. I don't really want to call it a series because it's more of just a volume, and no doubt there's going to be more of them coming in the future. But yeah, it's the ending to this volume. As of last time, I have done separate reviews for the other two stories, Technophobia and Time Reaver, so if you've not seen those reviews, maybe go and check those reviews out before this one so you can go in chronological order. But basically, so far, in like a brief summary, this series has been pretty damn good. I've really enjoyed it, and I think the characters have been brilliant. But yeah, that's both of the reviews summed up in under 10 seconds. How good's that? In case you don't know, basically the 10th Doctor and Donna are back on Big Finish with their new audio dramas, which is very exciting. It's just been released now, like in the past week or so, on the Big Finish website, and you can go and check that out. I will leave the links in the description below. You can either buy it in a CD format or a collector's edition book, or the snazzy digital version, which is like all new and technological. And yeah, you don't actually get it, it's just like a download thing, but I don't understand that type of stuff. But yeah, technology is fun. But yeah, I will leave all the links that you will ever need in your life about this product in the description below. And yeah, I do apologise for your bank account balance in advance. Yeah, Death and the Queen, as I said, is the final of the series, and personally the first thing I'm going to say is it doesn't really feel like a final. It just feels like any other story, which is separated in three different ways. They are completely separate from themselves, and yeah, it isn't really much of a final because it isn't. Of course, series 4 ended with a final story, so all three of these stories are just stories in their own right, really. We don't have any overarching plot and places, so in case you're wondering to get the single versions, you could essentially listen to this, in fact, in any sort of way. You could listen it back to front, and then you could just sort of do a jumbled order. You don't really need to start with Technophobia. They're just all standalone stories, really, which I think is a good thing, I guess. I'm guessing that if they do future box sets in the future, they might do more of a series sort of balance thing. But yeah, overall, the series has been a good one. I really enjoyed it, and I think that this episode is one that is very good as well. I think that the description for this episode on the Big Finish website sums it up pretty well, to be honest. It basically says that Donna Noble has never really been very good with love and not really had much luck, and that is basically what the episode is about. You basically find out that Donna is going to be queen of this country, and it is a very, very nice way that they've done it, because we have an opening sequence, horse coming along, and to start with I was unsure if it was David Tennant or not. It sounded very weird, but yeah, we have this scene where he demands to see the queen, and then you could just imagine the doors open, and then Donna's there, and she goes, "And you're speaking to her now," or whatever, and then the theme tune goes. So I really do like that opening. It kicks it off so well. It's one of those stories that sort of starts with its ending and cleverly sort of twists the plot, which I kind of forgotten about, sort of into the story, which is, I do believe, is exactly what it's meant to do. Basically, the story starts with the ending of it, and it sort of retells the story in a way, but in a way that it's actually a present adventure. So I do like the way that that was done. I think that was done very well, and once again, a different format to the rest of the series as well, which is nice to see, and sometimes something that the new series does adopt quite often. I don't think I've ever listened to anything written by James Goss in the past for Big Finish. His name doesn't really ring a bell for Big Finish writing. I think he might do for the new series, though. I can't really remember. But yeah, I don't think I've listened to anything that he's done in the past, especially for the classic series, if he's done anything for that. So this was a solely new thing to me. And yeah, overall, I think the plot was interesting. It was a creature for this story is Death being personified into sort of a being with a human skull. And yeah, I like that. I think it could have been used a little bit more, though, throughout the story, as genuinely we don't really get to see it much. For the majority of the story, when we actually first start to hear about Death and his voice echoing and things, he's actually stuck up in a cloud, which is really ironic because there's many different cloud references in the story, which, in case you follow me on social media, you will know that quite a lot of people call this bit of my hair a cloud because it looks a bit like a cloud, apparently. But yeah, it was quite fun to hear the cloud constantly references a threat, as I couldn't help but make jokes about myself, which, hey, that tends to happen quite often. Death isn't really in it that much. I think that towards the start of the story, of course, he's in the cloud, and then towards the end of it, he does actually come down and he is in a physical human, and I would say that that's probably the final 15 minutes of the story, and yeah, he could have been in it a little bit more. I do believe that he wasn't really in it too much to establish a full threat in there, you know, and he wasn't the most interesting of villains. I would say throughout the whole of the series, Death is probably the least interesting villains of the box set, I would say, but he was still a good one. I think that he still had quite a good premise. He basically wanted a bride, and Donna was his bride, and not Rudolph, which I'll come on to him a little bit later. And yeah, I think that was an interesting plot, although it wasn't really established too well. Death is basically a con artist, along with his sort of skeleton buddies, and yeah, I really do like that. I think that it worked very well. I think that it would work very well on screen as well. I've sort of seen some fighting skeletons. I'm pretty sure that's been done in the past, though. But yeah, I think that it worked very nicely. I think that the title could also be a bit misleading, as I did for some reason expect like Queen Victoria to pop up in the story, story, which I've got a feeling that would have been a good opportunity if she didn't come up in the Day of the Doctor, maybe establishing that weird thing that we had in the relationship with Queen Victoria in the Shakespeare's Code. But yeah, I think that it worked well. I did expect the Queen to appear, but it turned out the Queen was Donna. So yeah, if you're expecting Queen Victoria or any other monarch in this story, that's not happening. Doctor and Donna go on a little bit of a break, really, and to see at the start of the story, we actually have them just having a bit of leisure time and exploring, and nothing really goes wrong. So it was nice to see that, them just generally having a nice time, which no doubt they do have every so often. Of course, that just doesn't make a story, but yeah, I'm guessing that that would happen from time to time. And yeah, throughout that, Donna basically meets Rudolph over some roulette games, and yeah, from then on, we get to see them sort of going on different places together. I do believe they sort of look up at a sunset. Oh, how romantic and all that. And I can't remember where else. I think it was a restaurant, and then the Doctor keeps walking in, which allows for a really nice scene because the music accompanies it really well. They're having like this really nice romantic time with this really nice romantic music in the background, and then the 10th Doctor comes bounding in and questioning where he comes from. And I think that that was just a great way that they used the story because it works so nicely. It was nice comedic effect, and yeah, it was really nice the way that the music and the script played out as well. So definitely one of the best pieces of music that I've seen in the Big Finish audio series for the 10th Doctor so far this series. Again, for this box set, there is a bit of a running theme with the cast for this story. You may have noticed that if you see my other reviews, you will know that the cast list for each story is about 2 lines long on the Big Finish website, with really many characters, to be honest, at all. I do believe that others are just played by other people in the cast. Of course, we have David Tennant as the Doctor, Catherine Tate as Donna Noble, Blake Ribson as Rudolph, which is, of course, the husband or husband-to-be of Donna, Alice Cridge as Queen Mum, and then Beth Cormers as Hortense, and then we have Alan Cox as Death. And then the other people are played by other members of the cast. So yeah, and there isn't really, once again, not an extended cast at all for this story, compared to something like the monthly range on Big Finish. A very small cast indeed, but once again, I think that works well with the new series format, as I think that this one did have a bit of a different format to the new series. I felt that it wasn't as strict to the new series sort of format as the other stories have been, and it did sort of drag a bit in places, and it didn't really feel completely new series to me. It did well within the format. It was nice. It had the Doctor and Donna in, of course, which made it very modern indeed. And yeah, there was some nice little moments in there, but genuinely I think that this was the least believable as a modern episode of the whole series so far. Character-wise for the story, I think that the best, hands down, was Catherine Tate's Donna. She had some brilliant lines in there, as assumed by the title Death and the Queen. She's pretty much the main character of the story. She had some great comedic lines, and it was really nice, the relationship between her and Rudolph's mother. It wasn't really a very good one, and that allowed for some really nice comedic parts. I did really like that. And towards the beginning of Time Reaver, he didn't really feel too much like the 10th Doctor, but then halfway through, the writers sort of remembered that they're writing for the 10th Doctor, and then sort of crammed in quite a few references to his era, which I think worked well to sort of bring the ending to the story alive. And then once again, that happened for the final episode as well. We had some really nice little scenes, especially towards the end with David Tennant in, as well as him trying to cope with the idea of Donna leaving, which you may have seen, actually. That was a clip that was released as a bit of an advert. I can't remember what on though. But yeah, it was a really nice scene between the Doctor coming to grasp with another person leaving, and sort of going on and saying how can you fall in love so fast because you're human and like your lives are sort of smaller than his and things. It was generally a really nice scene, and I could imagine if she was to actually leave, that would have been a really nice way for her to leave, because I think that it worked very well. It was different. It was a bit like the Martha leaving thing, but sort of what the Doctor was thinking in his head at the time, and sort of the different things that he feels every time somebody else leaves. It really was a really nice scene, and I think that it worked very well with the story. Really well represented as well, considering the 10th Doctor and Donna are friends as well, which is something quite rare for a companion of the new series and the Doctor relationship in there, and I think that just worked brilliantly, going along with their relationship in the story. And yeah, I think that towards the end, David Tennant had some brilliant lines in there. For example, there's a scene where Death says, "I am Death," in this really sinister voice, and then the Doctor goes, "Well," and then in his voice, "Well, sort of." And then the Doctor also goes, "Hello, is it me you're looking for?" Which I'm pretty sure is a reference to a certain song, but yeah. I liked that. I think that it worked very well towards the ending. I think the comedic factors in the part played really well with a very sinister Death character, and we just had the Doctor sing these random jokes in places. I think it worked very nicely. And once again, I think that it made the ending of the story a bit more upbeat, as in towards the start of the story, it was a little bit down in the dumps and a little bit sort of miserable in parts, because we're in a castle where people are just dying, have a cloud attacking people. And yeah, it was a bit of a sort of down in the dumps, quite depressing sort of plot to the start of the story. But then the end of it, when it was meant to be coming to the end of everything's meant to be very dangerous and threatful, there is this really nice scene, of course, with the Doctor coming in and then sort of making everything sort of a bit more funnier. And once again, because the Doctor's being funny and creating jokes, then Donna goes off and starts creating a few jokes as well, and we have the sort of that bouncing off of comedic stuff, which wasn't overplayed, which Big Finish handled that very well. It was the ending to a story, and it worked very nicely. It didn't take away from the plot, it didn't make it feel cheesy, unlike something that the new series would do with, say, the Moffat era or the 11th Doctor era. It would be over comedic and annoying, but this was a very nice balance between a sinister plot and the comedic factors, which worked very well. To Rudolph now, Donna's potential husband. Yeah, personally, I think that he didn't really have too much of development. I think that he was a little bit boring in places, to be quite honest, and I couldn't really see what Donna sort of seen in him, really. I could sort of see it towards the start of the story. I liked the way that they were going with him. I think that it worked very nicely to see them on different occasions and things like that. But then as we got to the castle and then settling down, he got a little bit bland, and then we sort of started to reveal that he in fact made a deal with Death in order to not marry Donna, but for Death to marry Donna, so they could sort of do a transfer in order to save, and could use his Donna to save Britannia and the kingdom and everything else. And he's a bit two-faced, I think. And I think that Donna may have reacted a little bit more. I liked him in parts, but I think that once again, towards the middle, he became a little bit bland. But I liked the way that we had a few revelations between his character at the end. I think that worked nicely. But yeah, genuinely, his character was a little bit bland in parts, but he was still a nice character. Found out that one of the ways to keep people safe was to use the kingdom flag. So basically she dangled the flags out of all the castle windows in order to protect the castle, and she also had her dress made out of that as well, and that is how she absorbs all of the energy from Death at the very end of the story, which was a very creative thing to do. And we have this really nice character called Hortense, which is in fact well, Donna's I guess peasant slave in a way, who was meant to sort of servant, I guess would be a better phrase, but yeah, basically one of her first-hand, right-hand servants, whatever they're called. And yeah, she worked well, and I like that she sort of became a companion to the Doctor in the story. When Donna was off getting married, the Doctor was trying to figure out what was going on, and he was with Hortense for the majority of that part of the story, and she sort of became once again a bit of a companion for the story when Donna wasn't there, which I did really like. And there's this really nice scene when the Doctor fell out the window because there was a skeleton around his neck, which you may be familiar with from the actual trailer for the box set. And yeah, that was a very nice scene. Once again, a funny one. I think that Hortense and the Doctor played off each other really well. And yeah, she was sort of a nice little temporary companion, which is something that is a reoccurring theme for this box set, I do believe. It is in episode 1 in Technophobia, we had Bex with an X, which she was sort of Donna's companion. And then in Time Reaver, we had Cora, which she was a very big part of the story, once again a female character in there. And then for this episode we had Hortense, which she was another female character for the story, who sort of became a mini temporary companion, which I think that is something interesting that Big Finish are deciding to do, sort of having companions for one episode as well as Donna. I do like that. I think that it worked well. Maybe in Volume 2 we could see an alien companion or something, like sort of a temporary for the story, like an alien squid or something, although we had one in Time Reaver. That was a bad example, wasn't it? Maybe a penguin. But yeah, it would be really nice if they do Volume 2. It would be nice to have a character in there that is an alien to follow the Doctor around for the story, because I think that is something that the Doctor Who could do very well. Or even, I don't know, another robot dog, or something nice that isn't like another humanoid character, somebody who's very different. Or even, going away from the female thing, having a male to follow them around for the rest of the story, so they can sort of have a male companion, maybe. Just sort of throw ideas up for a bit for the second volume, which I have a feeling the second volume may be another episode longer. I think that they might go a little bit more adventurous. I think that this series is very much a pilot for Volume 1, and then the next series may be a little bit more adventurous in places, as they do tend to be sort of testing the waters for different eras. For example, as I said in the last review, we had a modern day story, we had a very space age story, then we have this one sort of a rather historical castle style of story with death and things, a quite sort of religious idea. And I think that in the next one we might play off that a little bit more and maybe go from what stories were more successful and then sort of develop the ideas there and maybe go even a few more little ideas and things. So yeah, I think this series is very much a trial run for the different ideas that they could use in the future, or maybe even bring on Wilf. And we did have him referenced in Technophobia, and I'd love to see Bernard Cribbins back, so that may be an idea that they could adopt. Bring back Donna. Just imagine that the 10th Doctor, Donna and Bernard Cribbins as well. That would be amazing. But yeah, I honestly think though, if they do another series of the 10th Doctor stuff, I think there's going to be a very high chance that they're going to bring back Billy Piper. I think maybe do some Series 2 ones and maybe tone down Billy Piper's annoying attitude from Series 2, which, hey, that might be possible, because Big Finish can literally pull off miracles. But yeah, maybe that might happen, I don't know. They're either going to do that and maybe bring back Martha or Rose, but maybe they could just keep it to how they've got at the moment and carry on with Donna for another volume, which I'm not complaining at, because as I said, for the whole of the series, Doctor and Donna have been the perfect match for the series, and they couldn't have brought the modern series back in any other way than having that best companion team in there. So I think it just works so well, and Big Finish have been able to expand over that 14 episode format that we had with the Doctor and Donna last time. So overall for this story, I think that once again it was another good one. I think that Technophobia was probably my favourite of the series. In fact, I think it pretty much went in order of me liking them, to be honest, being Technophobia, then Time Revert, then this one. I did enjoy the story for this one. I just felt that it had sort of parts that could have been a little bit more developed in there, and a bit of the format could have been took out and then added in with something else. I did get a little bit confused towards the start as well, as it did tend to jump into it a little bit too fast, and it felt like sort of a bit of the script was missing, literally. And yeah, I did still enjoy the story. I think that it worked very well. It was a nice sort of testing water style story that could have been a bit more developed in places. Death as an idea was an interesting one, although he could have been on screen, I guess, a little bit longer, or the metaphorical visual screen on your mind, I guess. He could have been in the story a little bit longer, and that would have been nice, because I think that considering he's on the front and everything, and he is the main villain of the story, I just felt a little bit underwhelmed by the amount of time that he was actually in it, which brings to the end the 10th Doctor Adventures. And yeah, honestly, how could I sum this series up? A perfect start to the modern series on Big Finish, a great example of what Big Finish can do, and I highly recommend this box set to people who are fans of the 10th Doctor and Donna, because as I said in every review, it's like they've not ever had a break from Doctor Who. We're talking 7 or so years that they've not been on screen together now, on an actual episode, I do believe, and yeah, it's just like they've never left. It is seriously brilliant. So if you're thinking about this box set and thinking about getting it, I highly recommend it. It is a brilliant release, possibly one of my favourite ones from Big Finish that they've released this year so far, definitely. I'm looking forward to what else they come out this year with, obviously Jago and Lightfoot as well. There's more of that coming out, which you know probably, that I absolutely adore. But yeah, a great example of what Big Finish can do, and honestly, this is the biggest jumping on point for Big Finish that has came across in years. So thinking of becoming a Big Finish fan, this is literally a mid-stepping on point for you to buy this box set and to just kick off your Big Finish addiction from here. It works extremely well as a setting off point, and generally it's got some really strong stories in there as well, but from a classic fan's perspective, you are probably going to be a bit underwhelmed in parts, I would guess, but I think that still some would quite enjoy it, because even though it's the 10th Doctor and Donna, it works well, and I think that it's a nice story and a great example of what Big Finish can do. As I said at the start of the review, I will leave in the description below all the links you will ever need to go and buy this release. As I said, I highly recommend it, and all the information you need should be below, and if it's not, feel free to ask a question in the comments and I will reply. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a big like, please subscribe if you're not already. If any questions, please do leave them below, and I'll be sure to answer them at some point in the near future. Thanks again for watching, I shall see you all next time. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.